creativity is about solving problems in a way that we cannot possibly solve using analytics alone.
But public relations helps drive that sale.
I mean, I'm a high school dropout. I didn't know. I was like, yeah, I will. I'll scale it.
What I did was I put both my careers together, and now I'm helping people in probably the most meaningful way I can possibly do that.
This is Richard Gerhardt.
And Elizabeth Gerhardt.
Have you ever wondered what it's really like to be an entrepreneur? Have you ever wondered about protecting your ideas? Do you need intellectual property? Well, we'll be answering these questions tonight by talking with cutting-edge entrepreneurs.
Right. And we have two presenters tonight. And although their companies are very different from each other, they both, I think, have very heartfelt projects.
So before we get to our guests and our presenters, let's talk about intellectual property.
Well, so I like to do kind of some funny things I find on the web. So I found this on the Giant People website. We call this segment Copyright Conundrum. So this is about copyright. So this man who runs this website found a very interesting copyright. Usually.
So let's first of all remind our audience about what a copyright notice is.
Please.
So you'll notice like with a book or a movie at either the beginning of the book or the end of the movie, there'll be a copyright notice, and it's a little C in a circle usually, or the word copyright with the name of the copyright owner and the year that the work was created. So these are all over the place, right? And so this notice is not necessarily legally required, but people put it on their stuff anyway, just to show that they're going to be tough about protecting it. So Elizabeth found one of the most unusual copyright notices that we've ever heard about.
But I feel like this copyright notice really sums up the whole idea of intellectual property. So I am going to read this. It's mine. I tell you, mine. All mine. You can't have it because it's mine. You can read it, please. You can quote it, thanks. But I still own it because it's mine. I own it and you don't. Nana, nana, nana. So there. Copyright 2001, 2003, 2000, question mark, by Jeff Jarvis.
So if you really want to go to town on your copyright notice, you can do that.
No, you can't do exactly that because he has the copyright on that.
Right, of course. But if you really want to go to town on a copyright notice, that's what you can do.
Right. And we're going to talk more about copyrights now because we found an article about China's actually improving its copyright protections for people. So
hard to believe, but China is trying to make steps to enter the Western world of intellectual property. And what's so fascinating about China is that they've had copyright laws on the books for a long, long time, but they lacked teeth. It used to be the maximum fine that you could get for a copyright violation in China was about $50,000. Well, they've changed the law now. And so you can really go for the jugular in China. You can get up to 5 times the amount of damages that 5 times the revenue of the company that is doing the copyright violation. So it's really changed from practically nothing to something that can really make a difference and serve as an actual deterrent. How this law is enforced in the Chinese administrative system, they don't really have courts, but how that actually works out remains to be seen. But at least the law is on the books now, and you can argue for stronger copyright protection.
And you can get up to $276,000. And I did want to ask you about copyrights here. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't help people with copyrights, but people register their copyrights in the US, and that's certainly the best protection in the US. But do they need to do anything in China? Because here, let's make sure we have this right. The minute you create something, music, sound, write something down, you have a copyright, right?
Right. So under the Copyright Convention of 1982, once you create something, it automatically receives a copyright. And in the United States, you can register the copyright. That gives you a lot of extra legal protections that you wouldn't have if you don't register it. So we always recommend registering important copyrights. But that said, you still have copyrights in anything you create automatically.
Around the world?
Around the world. The US is the only country that has a registration system. Everybody else just sort of relies on this, you get it when you create it type of method. And it's it's good to know that you have copyrights outside the US, and you really don't have to do anything except enforce them if you're up against a copyright infringer.
Excellent.
Yeah, so good stuff. Everything you ever wanted to know about copyrights, but were afraid to ask.
So I am just dying to get to our guest today.
Yeah, he's absolutely fantastic, and I love his topic. And we'll be right back after this message. You can make yourself more creative. And coming up after the break, Nir is going to tell us just how you can do that. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after this. Do you know how to change your brain to be more creative? Our next guest will help answer that question. Nir is a world-renowned creativity expert, and he has taught thousands of leaders and individuals around the globe how to harness their power of creativity for their business. His work on creativity has won a Clio Award, and he was nominated for an Emmy. And he is the author of a new book, The Creator Mindset. Welcome, Nir Bashan, to our program. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's going to be fun. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so tell us, how can we improve our creativity?
Well, there's a lot of ways. It turns out that creativity is one of those things where we're all born with it, right? And we just have to learn how to re-access it. It turns out that 50, 60, 70,000 years ago, our ancestors were creative, and that's how they made it through, the long and cold winter. I talk about in my book about the world's first creative person named Harriet, and she was able to take a stick and that was nothing but a walking stick, and a berry picker that was nothing but something to get berries off a tree or a bush. And she put the two things together and was able to, survive the long and cold and lonely night. And, she immediately ran and shared it with her village. And it has become something that's deeply within our DNA now. We're all creative, but we choose to be analytical instead. We choose numbers and spreadsheets and logic and those types of things. And we've lost touch with our creative side. So it turns out that you can learn it. It's just really all about relearning it.
That's great. So you've worked with some luminaries, Woody Harrelson and Rod Stewart. Aren't these already creative people? I mean, I would think that just by virtue of where they're at, they're creative off the charts. So how do these people enhance their creativity, and what are they trying to create?
What's shocking is that these famous people, and I've worked with a bunch of musicians and even more actors and actresses. The thing that's shocking to most people is that they are no different than you or I. No different. There is nothing different between this famous singer and you or me or someone else. They just have a prescriptive ability to maintain creativity and call upon it whenever they want. So it really is a system that you need to relearn how to use and call upon whenever you want to use its powers.
So I wanted to ask you, Nir, how do you define creativity?
So it's a really good question. Creativity for me is the ability to solve any problem that analytics alone cannot provide. So you would think that I do a lot of work with, the International Trumpet Players Association or whatnot, but I don't. I do more work with the Mortgage Brokers Association and, different financial groups. Why? It's because people understand in those groups, especially, that the numbers don't show everything, right? The numbers cannot possibly show you everything that you need. Behind the numbers are really interesting things like empathy and an understanding of the marketplace and all of these creative attributes that are not readily available to you if you only look at things from an analytical perspective. So for me, creativity is about solving problems in a way that we cannot possibly solve using analytics alone.
Don't you think that takes a little bit of courage? Like if you're putting some of your emotional stuff into it, you're kind of putting yourself out there, right?
Totally. So I believe that we could have easily have landed a woman on Mars by now. I feel we could have cured cancer. I feel that we could have cleaned up the air in major cities. I've been on some, amazing committees that people are presenting ideas that are really, out there, but they're still likely. The problem is that a lot of people don't have the courage to take that leap of faith on a creative idea and go and do it. And that's a really big problem, you guys. It's not just a entrepreneurial problem or a business problem. It's a society problem. It's a worldwide issue of humanity getting to the next level. It's a problem. So the woman who's working at SpaceX or NASA, and she went to 4 years of college, then 2 years of graduate school, 2 years of PhD school. She's graduated with a ton of debt, right? She's getting a dream job. Is she, she's got a family to feed and a mortgage. Is she going to take a risk on a creative idea? Or is she just going to say, you know what? Oh, that's too wild. That's too out there. I'm just going to work on this, standard propulsion model instead of that 8-mile long wing that's going to catch sun and like propel it, because that's a crazy idea. Would I do that? Or would I take the normal and the true sort of path of what most people take, which is, I'm not going to cause any waves. I'm not going to cause any disruption. And unfortunately, most people take that path, but we need people to take the path of creativity if we are to get to the next level.
So if somebody wants to approach things in a more creative way, what do you recommend?
So the first thing I would recommend is to do what I am not doing right now, which is to listen. We're on a podcast, we're on the radio together, and it's fantastic, and I'm talking a lot. But when I'm out consulting, I've worked with some amazing companies, from JetBlue to the NFL Network, from Ace Hardware. I do far more listening than I do talking, and I'm embarrassed to admit, and maybe people in the business community should admit this a little more, but I learned this the hard way because I used to go to meetings. I swear to you guys, I used to go to meetings and I used to wait for people to talk so that I could talk. And I was on my phone half the time, right? I ran a ad agency with $250 million in billing. And I literally did not listen to my executive council. I had hundreds of employees and I thought that I knew everything. And what I ended up doing was losing the creative ability to listen and have empathy and really have the courage to say, you know what, time out on my idea. Let's see what other people are bringing to the table and really develop those ideas. When you're able to develop those ideas, creativity happens. Your listeners today, we're all in Zoom meetings, we're all in back-to-back go-to and Teams and all that stuff. Your listeners today can become more creative just by being a little bit more quiet.
I agree. So there is someone on this show who I consider an absolute creative genius, and that is Kenya Gibson. Kenya came up with the concept for this show. She came up with the format. She has had people stealing her ideas for years.
That's why she's on an intellectual property show, by the way.
She called me up. She's like, Elizabeth, I need a trademark now. So Kenya, I'd love to hear your 2 cents.
Yeah. So Nir, I saw that you were a film writer and you actually you had 3 movies that have come out. Would you say some of your tactics that you teach people in terms of use of being creative comes from some of those, some of your film experience and writing in that space?
Yes, absolutely. I've developed a formula of how to become creative that anybody can use. And yes, I started in the creative field, but then I left Hollywood to run a furniture refinishing company. And I was able to use the same principles that I used in Hollywood at the furniture refinishing company. And I thought to myself, you know what, something is going on here, right? And I'm on to something different. So I looked in the marketplace and there was literally nothing out there that dealt with the how of creativity. Everything was the why. Oh, why should we be creative and all this stuff? And why is important, but at the end of the day, why don't pay the bills, right? It's the how. It's putting one foot in front of the other and getting to work. And so I wrote a book called The Creator Mindset, which is really about the how of creativity. It's not a get rich quick thing. And, it's not anything like that. It's literally a cherry picked manual of all of these different things that I've learned throughout my, 20, 30 plus year career of, here's the best from this industry. Here's the best from, I ran a call center at one point. Oh, there's another tool. And I've encompassed it in such a way that it allows anybody, no matter what they're doing, to become more creative.
Well, I've purchased the book and I just got started on it. I didn't get a chance to get too far into it. I'm very excited about reading it, but maybe you can tell us a few nuggets that are in the book that might encourage people to take a further look.
Well, thanks for picking it up, Richard. I appreciate that. And, it's a big deal to me. The book took me almost 7 years to write because I'm not a college professor. I don't have classes on Mondays and Thursdays and office hours. I'm not in a leisurely sort of pace of life. I work as hard as everyone else does, as you and your partners do at the law firm. I'm up and at it every single day. I got employees and, retirement funds and all this stuff to look at and healthcare. So it took a long time to write. So I'm really, really glad that you're interested and you picked up a copy. I talk in the book about little victories. So we talked about listening, which is really important, but I feel that entrepreneurs and businesses need to understand the value of the little victory. There was an ice cream salesman many years ago who wanted to sell a bunch of ice cream machines, and his structure was analytical, which is what 99% of businesses do. If I want to sell more stuff and I'm analytical, I go to volume right away, right? I'm like, volume, get more leads, work the phones. And so that worked for a while, but like every analytical only business, it'll fail at some point or flatline. And so he flatlined and wasn't selling many machines. So he had a creative idea one day when he saw that there was a restaurant that kept ordering the machine. So he said, you know what? I'm going to go out there and see what's going on. He got there, a line around the block, an hour long he waited. And he got to the front and he had the best cheeseburger that he's had in his entire life, right? And the guy's name was Ray Kroc, and that restaurant was McDonald's. So if you're able to piece those little nuggets together, those little victories, it might take you on a path that's different. Listen, business school will tell you, hey, here's your 1 year, here's your 3 year, here's your 5 year, that's your business plan, stay in your pipeline, right? But creativity will tell you, well, sometimes that pipeline might change a little bit to the left or change a little bit to the right. Then what are those sort of, breadcrumbs that are occurring along the way that might take you to where you need to go in the first place? That's what I encourage listeners to do. I think it's something that people can do today. Start to look at those little victories and say, you know what, is my 1 year, my 3 years, my 5 year really on track to capitalize on what I'm good at?
That's great.
Yeah. So the name of the book is The Creator Mindset by Nir Bashan, Bashan. And I have to say that I work with Richard in his law firm. I'm not a lawyer though, but during this time of COVID and quarantine, wow, the creativity has gone through the roof. There's so many people addressing these problems and trying to solve them. It's just been amazing. So as you said, necessity is the mother of not only invention, but creativity, right?
No, that's really great. And I love that you bring creativity to the business world, because that's a very practical place to encourage creativity. But you mentioned that you're an entrepreneur. And so what's that been like over the years? Sort of, can you let our listeners know?
It's been
what a day in the life of a creativity expert entrepreneur is?
It's a great question. And I really don't think that we in the business community talk about our failures enough, because I've had so many of them. And I've had, companies go out of business. I've had employees lose their jobs that were relying on me to pay their rent and pay their mortgage and get ahead in life. And, I've disappointed so many people by getting it wrong so many times that, I think it's good to talk about our failures and to talk about what we've learned from them. I think they could be some of the most amazing creative things that can happen to us. For instance, a forest has to burn every once in a while for the soil to become enriched so that new things can grow on it. And a career in a business is no different. Yet we spend so much of our time trying to avoid these failures, right? We spend so much of our time going, my entrepreneurial journey was amazing. I have capitalized, this amount of money and blah, 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 and look at me. But that's not the truth. The truth is that, it's an up and down sort of battle. And hopefully, when you look at the ups and the downs, there's some kind of path that grows. My day-to-day these days, I've gotten a pretty nice little schedule. I spend about half of my time on the sales pipeline and half of my time on the content pipeline. And I got to tell you that having good legal representation is essential these days in entrepreneurship. I mean, I'm like most people, maybe slightly allergic to lawyers in general, I would say. And I mean that in the nicest way, Richard. I mean that in the nicest way. But, just a little bit, just slightly allergic. But it's really about finding a partnership with a good firm. I've been very lucky to have a great firm out of Wyoming. I literally cannot do it without them. And I urge your listeners to make that partnership with somebody that you trust, because there's so many obstacles that get thrown in the way as you are on your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure. No, and we couldn't agree more. I think having good legal support is really critical to any business success. Kenya?
Oh, I was just going to say that partner should definitely be Gearhart Law, right? Shameless plug. I have two quick questions for you, Nir. So what happens when you have too many ideas, right? How do you streamline those? And the second question is, have you thought of writing some sort of creativity manual to help people specifically during COVID? Because I feel like we're in two different eras now.
Yeah, it's very, very good. So on the first one, I did a keynote just before COVID. I think this is now March of this year with a real estate group, and I loved it. I love real estate. And it was kind of half agents, half mortgage broker. And I had an agent come after the talk, and she ran up to me. She's like, Nir, I've got too many ideas. I said, okay, cool. She's like, I'm super creative. I was like, oh, wonderful. She's like, yeah, watch this. These are my ideas. Are you ready? And she was like, bleh. I said, okay, well, let's look at some of those ideas. So the first one was, okay, on the listing, people take pictures like this. I take pictures like that. Cool, right? I'm like, totally. I love it. What else? She's like, okay, so on the listing, when blah, 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 I do this. And then this third idea was, so when we approach something on the listing, blah, blah, blah. And every single idea was not a genuine new idea. It was a manifestation of the same idea. So I teach people about the concept, the idea, and the execution. Those is the Trinity. That is the Trinity of creativity, right? The concept is the biggest way to look at the idea. The idea is like the middle ground, and the execution is what we do every day. It's where most people in business end up, working in their business instead of on it, right? It's that grind, like every day, I'm putting out this fire, that fire. I can't even think about the wider picture. So when we're able to break our business into those three sections, we realize that if we are like, oh, I have a ton of ideas, more than likely, those ideas are just manifestations of different execution. I did work with a pizza brand here in the US, a very famous one. And, I got together with the board of directors, and they went through all the Accentures and the Deloittes, and they just were like, we need to improve our efficiency by 0.002%, and then they couldn't get there, right? Because they were analytical. So they were like, we'll bring in the creative guy. So I sat down and I worked with them. I said, okay, guys, let's look at the concept, the idea, and the execution of your business. They're like, it's pizza, Nir. We sell pizza. What do you want? I was like, okay, but like, come on, like, what is it really? And they're like, oh, you want to know what it's really? I was like, yeah, give it to me. They're like, okay, we got it. It's pizza. I said, okay, let's start to think bigger. I mean, where did this company start and all this stuff? And then they started to kind of get, well, wait a second. Our founder came over from Italy in 1948 with this recipe or that. And they started to get excited. And then somebody said comfort food. I'm like, yes, maybe comfort food is your, idea. And then we started to talk, and several weeks later, we came up with sustenance, because somebody in the room said that if we weren't in existence, people would go hungry. They order pizza from us every single day. And I was like, that blows my mind. You literally are feeding people, feeding America there. And I was like, okay, so what do we do with that? And then they started to say, you know what? Instead of another cheesy meat lovers pizza, instead of another on the listing, we will do this. Let's do another product. And they started to look at calzones and stuff like that. And they came up with another product. One of them, actually, I remember said, hey, chicken soup is a comfort food. I was like, dude, that's crazy. That's so wild. And they got so excited by it, because a pizza brand putting out chicken soup. I mean, Chick-fil-A is doing it, but, it's a natural kind of which is like the best chicken soup. If you haven't had it yet, Chick-fil-A chicken soup is no joke. So they were able to come up with different sort of ideas that way, Kenya, and really identify that it wasn't just a manifestation of the same idea. Absolutely. I'm talking with my agent now to try to come up with a book that deals with creativity in crisis. I have a very popular chapter in the book now that deals with the Tylenol crisis of 1982. You're far too young to remember, but there was a horrible cyanide poisoning of Tylenol, and it led to incredible innovation that's with us today. You can't buy cottage cheese without taking off the plastic label. That all of that started during that crisis, and it was a textbook response to innovation in kind of the worst time ever. So absolutely, yes, I'm working on it.
Cool.
That's really great. Unfortunately, Nir, this has been absolutely fantastic, but we have to take a break. And but thank you very much for your fantastic advice. We hope you'll stick around and help us with the rest of the show. And after we come back, we'll be talking with Andrea Pass about rising above the noise and getting yourself noticed. This is Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gerhardt. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to Passage to Profit. And joining us for our executive spotlight this evening is Andrea Pass, who gets people on TV. So she's a founder of Andrea Pass Public Relations and created public relations campaigns for just about every product category you can imagine. And she uses a public relations model to secure coverage for clients in media outlets from NBC to ABC to MSNBC and Passage to Profit. So welcome, Andrea. I also want to point out that Andrea, as part of her participation in the show, made a charitable donation to the Fisher Center of Alzheimer's Research Foundation. So thank you very much for that. I'm sure that the charity will appreciate the contribution that you made, and welcome to Passage to Profit.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us about the PR world. What's going on there these days?
It's fascinating because so many people misunderstand public relations, because you have public relations, you have advertising, you have marketing, but public relations grows a brand by securing earned media, meaning not pay for play advertising. In advertising, you pay for something and it increases eyeballs. But in public relations, you are building trust, growing trust with different audiences to actually build your reputation, build that awareness, grow yourself or your business and thought leadership, and ultimately drive sales. So public relations is interesting because as human beings, we are consuming about 11 hours a day of content, from TV to podcasts to reading articles online to reading a hard copy magazine. And so why shouldn't every business find a way to be in that media content and to be able to use that media content over and over again to keep themselves relevant in our crowded world?
Well, I think they should be. and I know we've wondered in the past, until we got more familiar with the media world, how do these people get on these TV shows? Well, they find somebody like you, and it's a process, though, to get on NBC, right? Or ABC.
Exactly. With everything, it's a process. Nothing happens overnight. Someone sent me an email the other day. Someone wanted to hire me for one day to get them top tier television, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. And I said, anyone who is going to take your money is lying to you. No one's getting you that in one day. It's a process of pitching, knowing how to pitch the media, knowing how to follow up, and knowing how to form a story. And the same way as Nir was discussing the creativity and what is actually creative and new and innovative, the same holds true in public relations, that I work with my clients to come up with the right angle that's going to work. And not everything is going to be for the Today Show. There are many TV stations around the country, local stations, regional stations, online video content stations that might work better for you and your product and your audience, because we're all buyers at different parts of our lives. But public relations helps drive that buy, drive that sale.
I was just gonna say, I have had the opportunity to be on the Today Show before with some fitness stuff that I've done with a few brands. It's a very nerve-wracking experience. And I had no previous TV experience in the past. So I would say to you, what are some tips or some advice you would give to somebody who's new to the PR space, who's never been on TV before, so they would feel comfortable and confident and make a good impression?
The most important element when you're conducting a public relations campaign, and when you find that right public relations professional to work with you, because when you have an outside PR person, that makes your business look even larger. So even if you're a solopreneur, having an outside PR firm is going to help you. But you have to get your messaging down. You can't go into an interview without knowing what you want to say and understanding what are the points of the targeted audience. So in today's targeted audience of entrepreneurs, we need to then talk to the entrepreneur. We're not talking to the $1 billion, 4,000 employee business right now. And I think you need to know the audience. So before you do an interview, whether it's on national television or a podcast or a blog or a newspaper, is understand what is the point you want to get across. And it can't be sales. It has to be editorial content, because these sites and these media outlets are all about editorial content, not about you going on and saying, I want to sell my widget or my piece of cookware. You want to go on and say, this is the reason I've done this is to bring this, that, and the other thing to an audience. So in your case, when you were talking about fitness, you were offering fitness tips. I also say practice makes perfect. It's hokey, but it's the truth. And when you're doing an interview and you've been placed by a public relations person, take some time to practice, whether you're recording yourself on your phone or you're talking to yourself in the mirror, and make eye contact with yourself. It's an awkward thing to do, but it will make you more comfortable and you'll get the message out. And don't oversell. Say your point and then let someone ask the next question. So those are some tips for when you're doing interviews, whether it's on TV or any other person who might interview you.
So, Andrew, what's the media landscape like now in some of the bigger publishers, the Inks and the Fast companies? How are you guys placing articles and editorial there?
Right. And I think we're in a very weird world right now with the pandemic, and most of these media outlets have gone to freelance writers. So a lot of the staff has been eliminated. No one is in a building, so it's not as simple to reach them. I'm a telephone person, and I love picking up the phone and pitching a story. And the clients of Andrea Past Public Relations know that, and I miss that. So now it's a pitch, and it's an email pitch. So there are opportunities to reach freelancers at those types of media outlets that you were mentioning, Nir, and also opening up and recognizing there are many other media outlets to be had. So just because you think that that story belongs in Inc., it can also be in your statewide business magazine or newspaper, and you can get more of an audience there. It can also be in a national trade magazine that's reaching targeted audiences. So my job is to help navigate that field and make those recommendations to my clients and pitch and place, pitch and place, pitch and place.
Well, that's great advice. So if an entrepreneur can't afford a PR agent, what are some of the things that they can do themselves to help up their game a bit?
Well, first off, know your messaging. So what's the message and what's the story? It can't be that I want to sell myself as a business coach. I was talking to someone earlier today who actually gives tips for introverts. So come up with those tips for introverts, because there are a lot of people who are introverts. So know your story first, then determine where you'd like to talk to someone. And for now, skip the Ellens and the Wall Street Journals of the world and find something local or in your space, your category, and get in touch with someone at that media outlet with your thought for an interview or a story. If you could target your story to something happening, such as how to hold a holiday dinner remotely during pandemic times with great recipes, then use an angle that's targeted to something happening soon, We're getting ready for New Year, New You. What are some tips for health, wellness, business in the new year? So if you have something that could be targeted and be realistic, our consumer media space is crowded with COVID, politics, BLM, fires, weather. There are so many issues to remember that find the right person that will cover yours, but don't hound the press. Write a short email, 3 paragraphs or less. Have a catchy subject line. Follow up in 3, 4 weeks. If you don't hear back from them, stop, find another media outlet, move on.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And one thing I kind of want to go back to, because this is something that Kenya has told us from the very beginning. She obviously had a lot more media experience than we did when we started this, but radio especially, but everything likes a good story. So we do try to find people for this show that have a story behind what they're doing. And people love that. They love that personal feel.
I totally agree. There can't just be something that sales. There has to be a reason that you came to this. And it's interesting. I was mentioning before to someone that I'm on the board of the United Inventors Association of America. It's a nonprofit group that works with inventors. And I work with a lot of inventors, and their backstories are fascinating. And right now I'm working with an inventor. She's a single mom in Austin, Texas, and she tinkered. And her and her dad tinkered. And now her Go Hang It picture hanging gadget is available at HomeDepot.com because of all the press that we were able to secure for her. So Home Depot recognized that she was relevant and she was out there. And so I say to inventors, find that something that's out there for you because you can create more. It's not about the article, it's about the next step in the article. So those backstories help tremendously. I'm working right now with an entrepreneur who created a vegetable or fruit-based pancake and waffle mix. It's called Kicker Feast. The woman is originally from Barbados, and she was juicing and wanted to give her son carrot juice. And he's a young kid. He didn't want the carrot juice. So she threw it in the pancake batter. The son asked for more. So she ended up going back to school. She was an accountant. She also had a law degree. She went back to school for culinary to learn how to make her own pancake mix with flavors so that you taste the flavor and the pancakes are the color of the flavor. So the blueberry pancakes are blue. And here she is. Her backstory is the whole reason for her business. If it wasn't for her son not wanting that carrot juice, it never would have turned into carrot pancakes. So those backstories make great press interviews and great stories because there's more to you than a website. There's more to your business. There's that backstory. And I know that having been in the public relations field, as long as I've been in the public relations field, people love to hear the story of how I started at the CBS radio division in New York City. But the stories of who I'm working with now through Andrea Pass Public Relations are the stories they really love and resonate with them because I'm working with so many solopreneurs that are looking for their piece of the pie.
Well, that's just fantastic, Andrea. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the segment, but it's just absolutely fascinating journey. And it really makes me think about how important public relations can be and how it can even help solopreneurs. Normally, I think of public relations as being part of a big corporate department or very expensive and unattainable. But I appreciate that you're working with entrepreneurs, and I think the tips that you've given them this evening are just fantastic. So
I want to say one more thing. So we did have Sherry Hammond with Go Hang It on Passage to Profit, thanks to you.
Thank you.
And what I tell people that come on the show is, as soon as you've been on the show, you can take this logo from iHeartRadio and put it on your website because you've been on iHeartRadio in Manhattan and surrounding areas. And so you can use that as part of your media creds, which is pretty important, right?
And exactly, you hit the nail on the head. Public relations placements can be reused and reused and reused. And that's what I remind my clients. If this interview appears tomorrow, Sure, post it on your social tomorrow and tag the right media outlet and people, but post it again in 3 months and in 6 months and in 8 months, because the average reader of the content is not going to remember that they saw it, or it's a new person absorbing that content. So public relations and social media content go hand in hand. So make sure you're doing those things, because then your PR placement was a one and done. Doesn't have to be. I still go ahead. My placement of a lifetime was ABC 2020, a double segment about inventors and pitching and how inventors do that. To this day, that was about 7 years ago. Every once in a while, I post it on my social media, and nobody knows that it was that long ago. They're finding an interesting story about your company. So reuse your press over and over again. And that's an important tip for every single entrepreneur out there.
Well, that's very good. So thank you very much, Andrea. It's been fascinating talking with you. And we'll be right back after this message. Welcome back, everybody, to Passage to Profit, where we have a passion for ideas and entrepreneurs.
And a podcast that comes out tomorrow if you missed the first part.
Yes, what about that podcast?
Well, it'll be on iHeart, on their podcasting platform, and on our YouTube channel too. So if you missed any of this, you really do want to hear it, because creativity, public relations, and stay tuned for the rest of it, because we got two really great presenters coming up.
I can hardly wait. And I can hardly wait for the Power Move segment coming up with our own Kenya Gibson from iHeartRadio. Kenya, what's on the table tonight?
Yes, so on Power Move, we're going to be talking about Jessica Dewpart. So Jessica is the CEO and inventor of Kaleidoscope Hair. And if I had to describe her, I would say she is the modern day Madam CJ Walker. She came out with these miracle drops for hair growth and has created this whole line of hair products for celebrities. So every celebrity that you can think about is using her hair products. She's been on The Breakfast Club. She's been on a lot of different publications and doing a lot of great things. And recently, one of the greatest things she's done is she's donated some money towards a program in New Orleans that helps young girls ages 12 to 17 have access to Wi-Fi. So, you know, she's really creating opportunities to kind of close the gap on that digital divide and making sure that young folks have access to the resources that they need so that they can continue their education and really be connected in a day when, if you don't have the internet, I can't imagine what that's like. So just wanted to highlight her today.
Well, that's really great. And I'm so glad that you brought up the internet piece, because it's almost like almost becoming a basic human right now. If you're not really connected in some way, I think it's hard to be part of the world you're living in, right? So I'm glad to see that people are trying to make sure that everybody who wants to be connected can be. So
And what's her name again?
Her name is Jessica Dewpart.
Okay.
And where can we learn more about Jessica?
Yeah, so you can go to kaleidoscopehair.com. She also has a very large social media following. She's also on Instagram, and her name is Jessica, and her last name is Dupart. So she is our power move for today.
Well, thank you so much. And on to Fireside.
So for those of you who haven't listened before, Fireside Directory is an online video directory of small businesses. It's a YouTube channel and a website. I'm building it. I started it at the end of last year, just before COVID, pivoted to do my videos by Zoom instead of in a studio, as I had been doing them. And Kenya has done a video with me, and so has Andrea. And Andrea, yours is going to post soon. And I'm spreading them out a little bit. I kind of quit posting during the political season because, you know, all the noise. Anyway, so I have some fabulous people on there. I mean, you just heard Andrea. You can hear a lot more on Fireside about Andrea. So how am I going to get this out to the general public? I'm still building, but I'm just starting my campaign to draw people in to try to choose a professional. I want this to be the Wikipedia of small business online on video. And so I tried to dip into that creativity piece of me, Nir. And I have 2 cats. And my one cat will wear hats. She purrs. And I was talking to a marketing guy, and he was like, well, cats who wear hats. And I was like, yeah, there you go. So I started an Instagram channel. So if anybody wants to help me, follow me on Instagram, Cats Who Wear Hats. Also, if you're interested in seeing how much our cat loves her daddy, Richard. You can really
I
see
can't believe you brought that up.
you can really
All
see,
these people.
really see behind the scenes of our life at home with our cats. But cats who wear hats.
Well,
I
we did an interview with Checkers, the copyright cat, and she interviewed Elizabeth, or Elizabeth interviewed her.
I interviewed Checkers,
and Elizabeth got fired because she didn't like the way that that she was being interviewed.
No,
So
Checkers did not like the question I asked her, so she got very mad at me.
So
she has a voice, Richard voices, but anyway, it's a pretty funny video. So it's on my Instagram channel, or it's Checkers Gearhart is the Instagram channel owner, but it's Cats Who Wear Hats. And the reason I started this was because we had a young man on the show a few months ago, Nathan, the cat lady, who built a whole huge Instagram following just with pictures of himself with cats. And I thought, if he could do it, I could try it, and then I could use it to promote Fireside. So if
so there's your creativity for you. You know, it never ceases to amaze me how if you've got like a new cancer treatment and you put it out on Instagram, you get 7 likes. But if you show a cat or a dog, it's completely different. You get hundreds of likes, right? So if that's the way it is, you got to go
Andrea,
for it, right?
We need you here.
You know,
What's going on, Andrea?
I got to tell you, I just think that Checkers and these other cats can become media celebrities even further than Instagram. And I say, you know, years ago, quick story, years ago, there was actually a squirrel that would do water skiing. And this water skiing squirrel, they had this backyard above ground pool, and the squirrel would go around in circles on this little water skiing thing. It got covered by every press outlet under the sun. The owner of the squirrel made out like a bandit.
There you go. So,
well, if you can get a cat to water ski, then you deserve to get rich.
So I am going to hold something up for the camera while I talk about our next presenter. So actually our 2 presenters, what I want to say is they're in completely different industries, but I feel like they both started their companies from their heart. These are very heartfelt companies. And so for Holly Daniels Christensen, the question I have to ask listeners is, have you ever left a piece of your heart somewhere? And I think I asked that earlier, like a beach in Puerto Rico. And Holly, do you want to talk about how you help people recapture that? And I will show what you sent me while you do.
Yeah, thank you so much, you guys. This is fabulous. I'm learning so much on this podcast. So, but I founded Dune Jewelry from my kitchen table because of the realization that people had such sentimental and emotional connections to specific places throughout the world. Over the years, it's more sentimental attachments to experiences and places. So I started making jewelry using sand and natural elements at my kitchen table in 2007. And I was using sand from Cape Cod, where I grew up. And I was handing it out to friends and family, kind of seeing, I need feedback all the time, whether it's from friends and family or customers. So I was handing it out, gifting it. And every time I would see those people, they would be wearing the jewelry and they'd be like, oh, I just got back from Bermuda. I have this little pinch of sand. Can you make something from that? We had the best time. I want to make sure I can remember it. And it just was that moment of like, all right, number one, they really like it. Number two, maybe this can expand from just a hobby to a business. So fast forward 10 years now, I launched Dune in 2010 from my kitchen table, and we have 28 full-time employees, team members who some sit and make jewelry all day long. We have a sand bank manager because now we have over 4,500 sands and natural elements from all over the world sent in, donated by our customers after they had a special experience somewhere. Yeah, I think having a tangible reminder of a precious moment is so important these days, more so even with COVID, but also because everything we do is here. It's all stuck in our phones. Whereas with Dune, it can be right here next to my heart. This is sand from Positano, Italy, where I went on my honeymoon. So we basically create tangible reminders of life's best experiences.
Right. So you sent me, you gave me a choice of what I wanted, which was really sweet. So you sent me a wine stopper, which I requested.
Which will probably be used a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I requested sand from Puerto Rico. So I love the Caribbean. And of course, we haven't been for a long time because of COVID. And it's absolutely beautiful. And it's so just wonderful and professionally done. And then Richard, you gave Richard something too. So do you want to talk about what you asked for?
Yeah, so my daughter and I used to go to the Jersey Shore. I would take a day off when she was younger, and we'd drive down and just play on the beach when there weren't a lot of people there. And so those are very fond memories for me. And so when it came time to pick a gift, I thought, well, maybe I'll get something that'll remind my daughter of the times that we spent together on the shore. So
and you got a cute little dolphin. It's adorable, and it's just right for a girl her age. So these are really, really beautiful pieces, I must say. I really love them. So I thought I saw on your website that you can use materials that people send to you. Is that right?
Yeah. So we actually can use sand. We use flower petals from weddings, funerals. Yes, the question will come up, do we use ashes? I will absolutely use ashes. We've used crushed granite from the Rocky Mountains, golf course trap sand. No one wants to be, right? Yeah. Someone sent in sand from Pebble Beach, which is a very well-known golf course. I'm not a golfer, but the affinity and love that I have for the beach, many people have for golf. So it all kind of makes sense.
Together. Yeah.
It does tie together. And speaking of intellectual property, early on, my mentor was very big into teaching me about intellectual property, how important it is. So we do have some design patents, and we also have 2 utility patents and multiple trademarks. But one of the most recent trademarks that we just obtained is experiential jewelry, because every single piece of jewelry that goes out of our studio captures an experience for someone. And it may be an experience that they've already had or an experience that they're manifesting. Like I always wear pieces made with sand from the Greek islands, because someday I will get there. And this is just helping me manifest that trip.
Wow. What a great idea, and what a neat way to approach jewelry, tying beautiful pieces to memorable experiences. That's really a really great comment. Kenya, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just wondering, have you ever, and it's probably really tricky, but have you ever thought of doing anything with water? Is that, because I'm very connected to the water. Like I love the sand, but there's just something about water that, does it for me. So is there anything you've ever thought about doing with water?
We brainstorm about it all the time, and we have not come up with a way with our current process, excuse me, we haven't come up with a way to do that, but it's always on my mind. People have sent us salt from the Dead Sea, which I assume was water and it evaporated and they were left with the salt. But hopefully someday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just wanted to know what the creative process is like for you, Holly. How do you kind of get it through to staff, and how do you maintain that vision on a day-to-day basis?
Such an interesting question, because I tend to struggle with that. I mean, I was an artist when I started, and over the years that creativity gets beat out of you a little bit, because you're learning how to read a P&L. And you're learning about your cost of goods and how to do a proper cost analysis and figure out your labor costs, and especially because everything we do is handmade, custom made to order. We don't stock anything. So,
Hard to scale that.
And that was one of the things when I first started. I bootstrapped this whole thing by working in real estate for the first 3 years, because people were like, it's a cute idea, but you're not going to be able to scale it. And I'm a high school dropout. I didn't know. I was like, yeah, I will. I'll scale it. And now understanding that there's some truth in that. We're a multi-million-dollar business. We bring in well over $3 million a year. But as that revenue goes up, the profitability goes down. And then I'm like, oh, that's what they meant about scaling it, right? I'm like, okay, it's only taken me 10 years to really get it. But listen, I learn on the fly, and my creativity comes in waves. I find when I play with my little girls who are 7 and 8, I tend to really get a lot of ideas from them because they've got that childlike wonder and that fun that has not been taken away from them. That sounds a little dramatic, but it hasn't been beat out of them, just as sometimes it does for adults. So also I do dream ideas a lot. I mean, I come up with ideas every single day. And like you said, Nir, an idea is only as good as it is if you execute it, right? And I tell my team that all the time because we're just a huge group of artistic people. But it's interesting. I tend to keep a journal by my bed, write down those like half awake, half asleep type of ideas. I jump up and I'll write it down quickly because they go away by the morning. And that does help me stay in touch with my creativity personally.
That's great. Very interesting. I noticed on your website that you have a lot of different products and they're all gorgeous, but keeping, being able to make all of those products, each one being different, that can be a challenge to growth.
It's a huge challenge. Listen, I'm learning every day. I tend to say yes to a lot of things that probably, had I maybe had a business degree or had done this previously, I would have said no to. Thank God I have an amazing team who stick by me and keep me moving forward and trying to rein me in as I'm saying, yeah, we can do that. It's no problem. And they're like, oh my God, that's not going to be profitable work.
Yeah, but you never really know. And so I think every business owner has to do it their own way because you're there seeing what's happening. And it's always great to have advice, but you have your vision and what you want to achieve. And so you just have to go with what you think feel is right and take the calculated risk.
Andrea, I can see you have something to say.
Well, I have to say, Dune jewelry is absolutely beautiful. It is beautiful jewelry, and I love the experiential jewelry approach because of the fact that we don't need as much stuff anymore. We're finding that during this time. But if we have something that has meaning to us, and I'm a Jersey Shore person, we love the Jersey Shore. I miss all of my cruises and my Caribbean and all of that, and I look forward to that day. And I know when I've gone on these vacations, I bought those little containers of sand to bring back to people because I felt that it meant something. So as an entrepreneur and as a creativepreneur, I don't know if that's a word. Can we
trademark that?
Nir,
Yeah.
can we use that? Elizabeth and Richard, could we be a creativepreneur?
Why not? I think you can.
I think that you can, Holly. And so how did you grow to be 28 people? What were some of the business tips you can have for listeners today about taking that chance? Because I find you don't need to do something by a book. So the fact that you didn't do the by the book and you found your way, what are some tips you can offer for others to not necessarily do it by the book and be as successful as Dune Jewelry is?
Yeah, I know this probably sounds a little bit cliche, but I did a lot through gut feeling and emotional intelligence, just understanding that I was at my capacity when we first started and I needed someone to be able to make the jewelry. And I remember the one moment I was talking to my husband and he's like hardcore Boston guy, blue collar, works for the railroad. And he was like, and I'm like, I don't know if I can train someone to do this. Like I sit there with a toothpick and I place these grains of sand and like I see all these there's a little piece of mica, there's some quartz, and he's like, Holly, he's like, it's not brain surgery. You can figure it out. And I'm like, oh, Yeah, okay. It's not brain surgery. No. So
well, that's one way to put it.
but that really put it in perspective for me that of course there's far more creative people out there with a better eye than I have, right? Like, but I had a hard time letting go of it because I just like the emotional, and I had an emotional attachment to creating the jewelry, right? Like I loved coming into the studio and doing it every day. So I think that moment I'm like, all right, I've got to give this a try. I'm still working in real estate. I'm doing this on the side. I'm handwriting letters to every single customer, calling if an order went over 100, like, oh my God, thank you. And then it started to roll from there. And my real estate assistant, Dustin, who was with me since he was like 22, thank God for him because he's very tech savvy and things like that. He's like, let's make a website, easy peasy, whips it up. And so I had kind of his tech his tech smarts, and then my gut intuition, and we kind of rolled with it. And I know a lot of people say kind of fake it until you make it. I didn't do that. I really waited until the last moment when I knew I had to make a move, and then I would make the move. I don't know what the technical word is for that. But I couldn't fake it till I made it because I needed to keep a roof over my head. I don't have parents that would have bailed me out of a big mess. It's just me and my husband. So,
well, you did a great job of faking it till you made it, and you have definitely made it now. And I'm really sorry to say that we're out of time for this segment because we could talk about this forever, but it's dunejewelry.com. And I agree with Andrea, like we have so much stuff, but if you have meaningful stuff, that's a lot different. It's not just stuff anymore. So we will be right back after this break. You are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710, the Voice of New York. Welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart and our special guest, Nir Bashan, and our executive spotlight, Andrea Pass. And we just heard from Holly Daniels Christensen, but now can I call you Saint Chad? Chad Blecker is just really helping people a lot with what he's doing, and he's doing it in a really effective way. So I'm not going to say any more. I'm just going to let him explain. Hi, Chad.
Hi, everybody. So, I opened up a company to help not only seniors, but to also help people with special needs. One thing that's very, very serendipitous on this show specifically is the passion. I'm driven by passion. Just to go back a little bit, I'll give you a little background about me. When my mother was 43 years old, she was deemed terminally ill, and she was given 3 to 6 months to live. It's a story of hope because she lived for 7 years and we were on borrowed time. But it ended up being a situation where my family was the recipient of hospice and of home care and all that stuff. And it shifted my entire family's trajectory and path. My father opened up a home care company. We functioned for the last 20 years with my dad's home care company. We all ended up getting involved at some level. At the end of my career with Seniors in Place, I'd been there for 14 years as a case manager, making a very big difference in our seniors' lives, helping them champion the things that me and my family dealt with personally, But what you guys don't know is in the beginning of my career, I functioned as a project manager for construction. I owned a architectural millwork company, and I did fabulous construction work. So what I did was I put both my careers together, and now I'm helping people in probably the most meaningful way I can possibly do that. I opened up right next to my family's company. We did this together so they know I'm right there in the same footprint. And what I'm doing is I'm assessing people's homes based on their conditions, on the conditions they're dealing with. And I'm helping them find solutions for mobility and accessibility. In other words, I can help people get into their house, and then I help them with the flow in their house. If they have challenges with stairs or with just the bathroom, tubs, I can remodel everything so it looks gorgeous and it doesn't look like a modified house, and yet it's totally functional and they're able to live there in a very sustainable way, on their own terms. So that's kind of what I do, but I'm driven by that same passion as every other entrepreneur on this show.
That's great. I mean, that's such a worthwhile, profession. And I've never really heard of an expert in this kind of field before. So what have been some of your most challenging situations as a professional?
I think as challenges go, the most difficult part is the family relationships. It's not even so much what I do. It's helping families mitigate what they're dealing with and find those solutions. A lot of times, you walk into the room of a home and there's the kids and their adult parent and they're having an argument. You can hear it. And I walk into the room and I actually ask the same questions that the kids were asking, and that parents answer me very differently, right? But the kids are like, oh my goodness, what are you doing? Why didn't you just answer me like that? The reason is because when you put a professional in a room, it changes things. So really, I think my biggest challenges right now, it's twofold. It would be helping families and helping them get out of their own way a little bit, and also just getting the word out there so people do know, to your point, that I exist and that I'm there to help. There's a void in this industry. The void is where when people get discharged from hospitals and rehabs and so forth, they're told that they need certain things, and then they may be given a brochure or two, but there's a disconnect right there, and so I can install all the specialty equipment, but then we have all the other neat options. But really, I think it's just the conversations, helping people navigate the waters.
Well, and getting an architect in there is a huge, big difference, because you could say build a ramp to your front door. Okay. But an architect knows how to build a whole house, and knows, all the stuff to make it look, like you said, beautiful and normal, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So how do you market yourself then? It would seem like there's a tremendous need for this kind of service.
There is. And you know what? This is a great venue to actually talk about it, because talking about the entrepreneurial spirit, I used to do a lot of high touch marketing where I would go into facilities, subacute rehabs, hospitals, and I would work with all of their professionals, their discharge planners, their social workers, and so forth. And we'd be able to create and chart out, a plan so we could create some sustainability for folks. But right now, things have changed a lot. So we can't just go into a facility, because if you walk to a facility and walk in the front door, you're viewed very, very, it's very uncomfortable for everyone, because everyone has strict COVID protocols, especially with our high risk folks. So now, yes, we've pivoted and I've changed my entire trajectory. I'm doing a lot more with social media. I'm doing a lot more presentations like this. Zoom has become one of my best friends. And so it really is kind of, shift and stay relevant and stay in front of people.
So your website is njhomemods.com. Are you looking to expand outside of New Jersey?
I am, and I do work in Pennsylvania. I do work in New Jersey, a little bit in Manhattan, or New York rather. However, my big area that I've had my biggest impact in has been New Jersey. That's where I launched. And I think it's kind of funny when I show up to a home in Pennsylvania and the family says, "You're NJ Home Mods. This is strange." I go, "Yeah, I know."
Well, I like what you said too about Zoom friends. I think all my friends now are Zoom friends pretty much. It's kind of depressing in a way, but
yeah.
So Nir, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to, is that Skinner Simple Man lyrics framed behind you there?
Why, yes, it is.
Well done. You just went up like a notch in my book.
Cheers. Yes, it is.
I actually have an aunt who is an amputee. She's been an amputee for probably the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years. Obviously, psychologically, that's hugely impactful, like on the person and on the family. And recently she just changed her whole apartment. Like she had to move from one house to another house to be on one floor so that she can, be able to even just get outside. Yeah. She is getting a ramp soon, which we're really super happy about that. But we talk a lot about, to your point, home care and someone coming in as a home aide, but we don't talk a lot about the structural impact that a home would have and giving people that just, everyday daily liberty to kind of just get in and out of their house. So I guess my question for you is, what are some of the things that you would recommend, or what should a family expect when they work with you, about you walking them through that experience and that process?
That's a great question. And you do have, when people have issues like an amputee, and there's the emotional parts and everything. Part of the thing, one of the things that really helps people come back from that is them finding their independence and them feeling like they're self-directing a lot of things like care, if they can get around their house, to your point. So when I meet with a family, I want to empower them. I want to empower the amputee, the person who's struggling so much, to be able to regain that independence. So for them, if I'm able to, when we approach a house, I'm looking at how do we access it? What's the accessibility? Do we need a stair lift? Do we have lots of steps? Can we get a ramp? What's the most appropriate, way into the house? And that's great to get in, but now you have to create a flow. And what makes the most sense for them? Where are their trouble areas? And so I talk to them. And just like Nir in the very beginning, when he was talking about, I listen. I ask them some very specific questions about their condition. And then I listen to where their biggest challenges are. And then I empower them by giving them real solutions for those spots. Whether it's a bathroom or a kitchen. I had someone who was in a wheelchair, and we had to empty out, we had to move and change the way that a lot of the countertop space worked, because we needed room underneath the cabinets for their legs. It just changes things. We had to bring the countertops down. When you can offer someone a solution so they can live in their house on their terms, all of a sudden they're empowered and they feel better. It's a real liberating moment as well. And it's functional.
Yeah. So I got to ask Andrea, I bet you're bursting at the seams with ideas for Chad.
No, and it's fascinating, and it's something I'm dealing with right now. My parents are aging in place. Mom is 82, dad's turning 88 in a month, and they've had their health issues, and we've had to have bars put in for this or that, but they don't want to leave their home. And I think everything that Chad is doing in the marketplace that is growing, and the fact that you listen and come up with a solution. But I think obviously a lot of times the seniors may not tell the whole story, and the family would tell the whole story. So I think that's fascinating. And I think with so many more seniors wanting to age in place, they don't want to go to assisted living. They want to be able to see their families. I see what you doing as being an important element in this category, and certainly hope that you are out there talking to the press about what you're doing, because of the fact that we don't want to have our seniors move to an environment that may not prove to be safe. Many are, but there are those opportunities. So my question for you is how are you expanding that reach, and how are you meeting with people when someone doesn't want someone to come inside their home right now? And a lot of seniors don't do Zoom. So what have you done to be able to increase your business in these non-face-to-face meeting times?
So that's a great question. And what happens is you're 100% right. Everyone needs to feel safe and needs to know that we're protecting them. A lot of times we bring the family in. And what's neat is we can Zoom, we can FaceTime, and they can walk me through their home and their specific spots. So we can do a lot of the pre-assessment type of work over the phone, understanding what the conditions are, and then actually looking at different trouble spots in the house. And then we can at least give them a trajectory. And then when we do the work, if that's still a concern, if they're super high risk, sometimes they'll leave the house, or and we use all the PPE and everything, so we're all masked up and we're gloved, the whole 9 yards while we're actually doing our work. But we segment ourselves and we plastic ourselves in so that they feel much more comfortable that way. But from you had mentioned the business development side of things, definitely getting in front of people right now, exactly with the PR and everything, like what you're doing and talking about, getting in front of the press. That's a big initiative right now. That's what I'm doing right this minute.
What is the most common type of change that you make to a house? Is it a ramp? Is it a bigger bathroom door? Is it a step-in tub? Like, what do people need the most?
There's a couple of problem areas, and honestly, stairs is a big one. How we bridge that gap. A lot of times it is a stair lift, or sometimes people are still very ambulatory, but they're struggling with that last bit of the range of motion, and we can get away with putting a second handrail in. The tubs are a big one. I'm always swapping tubs for the zero threshold or low threshold pans. And so those are a couple that are very easy. Ramps are a big one getting into the house as well. So those are my big, I think that would be, the top three.
This is Chad Blecker, njhomemods.com, and that's really short for NJ Home Modifications, but he's not just in New Jersey, and since he's doing everything on Zoom now, reach out. I'm sure you're happy to help anybody that needs help. So
Absolutely.
Okay, so you are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710 with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. Passage to Profit with Elizabeth and Richard Gearhart. It was a fantastic show this evening. Really learned a lot and enjoyed our discussions with our guests. Before we go, we'd like to ask our guests for any final words. Nir, do you have any thoughts for our audience?
Really, it's all about looking within for creativity, not about spending any money or anything like that, and just sort of learning how to reawaken your own internal creativity. That's about it. Thanks for having me, you guys. It's been fun.
Thanks.
Thank you. Andrea, do you have any final words for our audience?
When it comes to public relations, go out and Google yourself and then Google your competitor. And if your competitor is securing press and you're not, you need public relations. So reach out to me, Andrea Pass, Public Relations.
That's great. And what is your website again? Is it Andrea Pass?
AndreaPassPR.com.
All right, great. Kenya, any final words before we jump off?
Just wanted to say thank you for everybody for contributing to this conversation today. It was great. I learned a lot. I love the creativity. I love the passion. And it's so nice when people can take what they're doing and turn it into profit. So, good job, everybody.
Great. So I'm just going to run through everybody's websites one more time. So we had Nir Bashan, NIRBASHAN. He's a creativity expert. It's nirbashan.com. Andrea Pass for PR. Andrea Pass, spelled just like it sounds. Andrea, PASSPR.com. Then we had Kenya did her power move, and you can reach her at Kenya Gibson with a P at iHeartMedia.com if you have any questions about publicity on radio or anything with her, or like radio spots, just media in general, iHeartMedia. Then we had Holly Daniels Christensen with DuneJewelry.com, just like it sounds, DUNE Jewelry.com, and Chad Blecker with NJHomeMods.com. So wonderful show, everybody. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we'd also like to thank our producer, Noah Fleischman, who contributes to the show so many ways. Thank you, Noah. Thanks for being with us. And don't forget to like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and also follow us on our YouTube channel. So this is Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart from Passage to Profit on WOR 710, the voice of New York.